Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get this guy rolling. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us for an update on the Billings Bypass project. We're appreciative of your willingness to participate in this virtual platform. Though we'd much rather see your smiling faces in person, we recognize that the public is curious about the project and how it's progressing, and we're anxious to provide you with an update on the status as well as hear your perspectives on the proposed design. Considering that, we'll use Zoom to get the updates out for now and keep our fingers crossed that we'll be back to meeting in person soon. To that end, I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items as we get started. Because the meeting is so well attended, we'll be fielding questions using the Q&A function. That's the button that looks like speech bubbles at the bottom of your screen. Questions that are applicable to the general public will be addressed live during this meeting. However, to be respectful of everyone's time, if your inquiry is specific to your property, a project team member will follow up with you directly in the next day or so. Please also feel free to add any other comments that you wish be heard by the project team using the same Q&A button. To have an accurate record of all of your feedback, we do need to funnel all questions and comments through the Q&A function and won't be using the raise hand tool for today's meeting. Following this meeting, you're also welcome to offer thoughts and ask questions using the project hotline, email address, or physical address. We'll provide those at the end of the presentation. We will be accepting public comment related to this meeting for 30 days. And finally, it's important to note this meeting is being recorded and will be added to the project website for future reference or for anyone who wasn't able to attend today. All right, let's get this show on the road. So a quick introduction of the project team members that are on the call today. From MDT, we have Rod Nelson, who is the Billings District Administrator. We have Fred Bente, who is the project manager, Mike Taylor, who is pre-construction engineer, and Michael Fabricius, who is the right-of-way supervisor. Representing Dowell, Doug Anderson is the design project manager, and my name is Lisa Olmstead. I'm public involvement manager and your general point of contact. And I will pass things over to Rod, who will go into a general project overview.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Rod Nelson. I'm the Billings District Administrator for the Montana Department of Transportation. Public involvement is a vital part of everything we do at the MDT, so we are very appreciative of the opportunity today for sharing with you this very important project, and also you sharing with us your questions, comments, and concerns. Looking at the agenda for today's meeting, I wanted to start out by giving you a quick overview of the entire Billings Bypass project with the 6 different segments planned for construction. Then Doug Anderson will be presenting in more detail the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass segments of the Billings Bypass. The entire presentation today should take about half an hour, and then we'll wrap it up with some questions, comments, and concerns. So the Billings Bypass project is led by MDT in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, Yellowstone County, and the City of Billings. The Montana Department of Transportation has contracted with Dowell to be the lead project engineer and public information coordinator, and with Morrison Merrily as the lead bridge engineer. While Kittleson and Associates, along with Marvin and Associates, are performing the traffic engineering and operational analysis. MDT is also contracted with LHC Incorporated and Granite Construction to guide us in the development of the Johnson Lane interchange segment. As you can see on the screen, the Billings Bypass project consists of 6 individual segments of roadway. These 6 segments are planned to be constructed in the following order. Labeled number 1 on your screen is the reconstruction of 5 Mile Road and its extension to connect to Highway 312 to the north. This segment is currently under construction with Riverside Contracting and is expected to be completed and open to traffic this summer. The second segment to be constructed will be the Yellowstone River Bridge. This project was just awarded to Wadsworth Brothers for construction. Work is expected to begin on the bridge as early as this August and take about 2 years to complete. The third segment to be constructed will be the Johnson Lane interchange, with planned construction beginning in the year 2022. This project will probably last 2 construction seasons and will feature a diverging diamond interchange design, which will be the first in Montana, but certainly not the first in this country. Doug will speak in more detail on this segment in just a moment. The fourth segment is the railroad overpass. It begins at the southern end of the Yellowstone River Bridge and continues south with a bridge over the railroad tracks. We plan on constructing this segment in the year 2023. The fifth segment is planned for construction in about 2024, is after both the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass are complete. This segment will construct the roadway between the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass. And last but not least, the sixth segment. We plan on constructing this segment of the bypass that runs parallel to Mary Street between 5 Mile Road and the Highway 312-87 intersection on Main Street in about the year 2025. So with that, Doug is going to speak with you in more detail about the Johnson Lane interchange segment and the railroad overpass segment of the bypass. Again, please don't hesitate to write us with any questions, comments, or concerns. In addition, if you prefer, you can also email the project team anytime after this meeting. The contact information will be shown at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. So yeah, we want to take a little bit of time here today to take a deeper dive into the Johnson Lane interchange and the railroad overpass segments, as Rod said. These projects are the two that are in design right now, as we've got the other two in construction. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the Johnson Lane interchange. What you see on the screen here is the current configuration that we're proposing. As Rod said, it's a diverging diamond type interchange for the interchange proper itself, but to make the operations work there, we also have to do some work outside of the interchange. So on the south side, there's some expansion to Old Hardin Road that you see here. There's some intersection improvements with Johnson, of course, the extension of Johnson to the south. We're looking at modifying B-Craft to what we call a 3/4 approach, where there's a right in, a right out, and a left in. And then we also have some improvements to Cole Street, which you see here, and an extension of Cole down to B-Craft. And I'll get into some more details about the traffic operations with these three intersections a little later. And then on the north side, we've got the realignment of the north frontage road. The current north frontage road intersection with Johnson Lane sits about right here, as you can see on my screen with the cursor. But with how close that intersection would be to intersections of the crossover and the ramps connecting to Johnson Lane, we've shifted that to the north and had to realign the north frontage road. On the east side, the north frontage road, the connection that we're proposing currently is actually through a reconstructed Sandon Boulevard. So existing right now, this white line here is Sandon Boulevard, but we're proposing to redo it in a kind of an S shape like this to help with some of the grades, and then terminate it with a cul-de-sac before it gets to Johnson right here. Now, like I said, this plan has been out there for a while. We have received a handful of comments about this configuration and all these improvements here. We've received a handful of comments about this configuration, especially on the northeast quadrant. We appreciate those comments. This is exactly why we're here today, is to get this information out and get the feedback. So thank you to those that have provided that information, and we continue to look for more feedback. Another cool highlight of this segment is the delivery method in which this project will be completed. Traditionally, most projects that an MDT constructs goes through what we call a traditional design bid build process, where engineering plans, construction plans are developed, right-of-way secured, environmental permits are obtained, and then the project is advertised for contractors to bid. And typically there's a handful of bids that come in, and the apparent low bidder is awarded the contract for construction. Well, for this project, we're actually using what we call a construction manager, general contractor, CMGC process. And it's a little bit different. In other states too, they call it construction manager at risk, if you're maybe familiar with that term. But what the big advantage there, or the big difference there, is that a general contractor is actually hired via a qualifications-based proposal. So instead of a contractor being awarded the contract via a best price, they actually get awarded via their qualifications. So as Rod mentioned, Granite Construction and LHC have been have been contracted to help with the design development of this project. And then as the design is complete, they actually have the ability to construct the project as long as their construction cost is reasonable. Now, how do we define reasonable? There actually is a third party that is in this CMGC process called an independent cost estimator, or ICE. And they also are familiar with, with MDT standards. They're familiar with the area. They're familiar with construction practices, and they also create an independent cost estimate, as the name suggests. And if the two costs are within an agreed upon threshold that MDT sets, then the contractor is awarded to the general contractor. If that doesn't, if those two numbers don't align, then the MDT has the ability to fall back to the traditional design bid build process and select a contractor based on low bid. Now, the beauty of this, truly the beauty of this system, the CMGC process, is the collaboration and innovation that the contracting community brings to the design of the project. Things like traffic control and project sequencing. They can look at a lot of the alternatives that we're considering and provide a different opinion on some decisions that can be made. And so far, that process has worked great on this project since we've been doing it for a little over 8 months. This project is no different, I guess, than any other project from a design perspective. I'm still running through a lot of the same challenges that we still have, and a handful more listed here on the screen. And I want to run through kind of each one of these. Of course, there's a lot more to go into these projects, but these are some of the major ones that we wanted to share with you today. I'm starting off with the traffic analysis and design. As many of you may know, there was a traffic analysis that was done here a couple of years ago to really took a deep dive into what the best interchange configuration is for this location. It was a tiered analysis. I think there was any possible configuration was out there was considered, screened by various selection criteria, and ultimately at the end of the day, this diverging diamond interchange was selected. Now, what you're seeing here on the screen, I know it's tough to see, so bear with me a little bit, but the two colors represent just directions of travel, the light blue versus the dark blue. And then the little circles with numbers in them mean the number of lanes in that particular segment. And then there's a little arrow associated with that circle, and that's just the direction of travel. So, in brief summary, the DDI, if you're northbound here, you'd actually cross over, travel along the wrong side of the road, if you will, and then you cross back over and continue, I guess, with normal traffic operations. And that just allows for smoother transitions on and off the freeway. With that being said, too, like I mentioned earlier, to make this interchange operation work, there was additional improvements that need to be made to the surrounding network, such that the interchange could operate effectively. Now, we've got some really neat videos that we've developed to make sure that all this stuff works. They're actually simulations of what a DDI looks like at this location, and we'd love to show them to you today, but with the limitations of Zoom and how it can be a little bit cumbersome to show videos and it's herky-jerky, so you can't get the full effect, we've included the link here. You can go to the Billings Bypass website on MDT's website and actually see these videos. And it shows perspectives from many different angles, shows what these side streets potentially look like, and of course what the divergent diamond looks like if you're interested. So please go visit that website. Another big thing that the reason why we're here today is for environmental review and clearance. So, this meeting today, not only is it to get information out in front of the public, but it's also to solicit the feedback for some improvements that we have outside of our original footprint. So the screen box, the screen polygon that you see that kind of surrounds the interchange was the original considerations for what we thought the interchange was going to have to go through for these new improvements back in the EIS phase of this project. So EIS stands for Environmental Impact Statement, which was completed, almost 5 years ago now. It went on for many years. Many of you may remember that process. During that process, we evaluated, again, many alternatives and came up with a footprint that looks very similar to this green line. But then as we refined our design, we realized that we needed to extend outside of that green box. So Part of that environmental review process is to get comments from the public for those areas outside of that green box. So that's another big step that we've got to step through here in the next, I'll say 4 to 6 months. Of course, road and bridge design, major element to this segment. I want to touch on a couple of highlights. First being trucks. No secret that there's 2 major truck stops on the northwest and southwest quadrants of this project. In our designs, we model actually these pickups, or excuse me, not pickups, but the semi trucks that travel through here, and make sure that our lane widths and our shoulder widths, curb placements, median placements, things like that are set accordingly. And not only just for the trucks, make sure they can get through there, but also the passenger vehicles. As all of us are progressing through this interchange in our passenger vehicles, make sure we feel comfortable alongside these big trucks that are going through. So they're definitely a consideration as we design the interchange. Another big thing is the bridges. Right now there's 2 bridge structures. The interstate goes over the top of Johnson. That configuration is going to be perpetuated. The interstate will still go over the top, but the bridges right now will be too short with this new Johnson Lane configuration. So we will demolish those existing ones and build 2 new structures. We are going to leave the interstate generally at the same grade that it is now. So we won't be raising or lowering the interstate. But if you are aware of the area, the clearance out there for the structure over Johnson Lane is actually substandard. So we want to correct that while we're doing this new construction. And the best way that we've determined is to meet that is to actually lower Johnson Lane about 2 to 3 feet. There was a question this morning that we thought was great that we didn't touch on initially was, what about drainage? I think the comment in large part was in consideration for like the 6th Avenue underpass here in Billings, where, the 6th Avenue kind of makes a belly as it goes underneath the railroad tracks. The beauty of this project here is we can lower Johnson Lane, but we don't create a belly. The grade actually from the intersection here with Old Hardin Road to the north actually can remain constant and continue downhill without having a sag or a belly in the road, right underneath the structures. So drainage, won't be as a big concern, similar to some of the other underpasses that you see throughout the area. The other major design element too that I wanted to bring, I guess, to your attention today were medians. We do have a handful of medians with all the turning roadways and things like that here. A lot of these medians that you see that I'm pointing to here on the screen will be raised medians. Medians help with guiding traffic through, the interchange. We'll also have medians along Old Hardin Road right here to kind of help guide traffic through there, since we're adding a lot of turn lanes. And like I mentioned earlier, B-Craft is going to become a right in, right out, and a left in, at least with its current proposal. So we want to make sure that we can control the left turn movement outside of there. Not only do we pay attention to what the cars and the trucks are doing, but we also want to make sure that the interchange will work for all users. So we are paying attention to what pedestrians have for facilities out there as well as cyclists. For those that are familiar with Old Hardin Road, quite a few of those businesses have sidewalks in front of them, albeit some of it's not continuous. We're going to correct some of that and make those connections where necessary, where there is gaps. So we'll be perpetuating what's there and also connecting the dots if there is any. So the red line that you see on the screen here represents the sidewalks. I apologize for its size, but that's the best we could do without it really dominating the entire graphic here. But I'll try to maybe explain. There were some good questions this morning about what the sidewalk, looks like. On the south side here, the sidewalk does extend all the way down to the existing sidewalk that I believe is in front of the Ace Hardware, if I remember. So there'll be continuous sidewalk from the intersection all the way down to the existing sidewalk there. We'll be adding new sidewalk on the likely adding new sidewalk on the east side of Johnson as well, so that future development can connect into it there. We'll be perpetuating the sidewalk generally on both sides of Old Hardin Road on the east side of the Johnson Lane intersection, and then also making sure that we connect to the new Beecraft path that's actually being constructed as we speak, or actually wrapped up. Now going through the interchange, a little bit different challenge there, since we are crossing traffic over, and vehicles essentially be on the wrong side of the road, on the opposite side of the road, I should say, not necessarily wrong, but the opposite side of the road. We know, what do we do with pedestrians? A lot of the best practices around the country have suggested to put the pedestrians down the middle. So we've done some extensive research and studied and determined that, the best place to put the pedestrians as they traverse through the crossover is actually down the median. There will be traffic barriers so that an errant vehicle won't, end up in that median and potentially strike a pedestrian. And the other thing that I would like to point out too is that these crossings, as they cross the ramps, most of those are signalized, not all of them, but most of them are signalized. There will be a fairly safe crossing for pedestrians as they progress through the interchange itself. Now, cyclists, they've got a couple different options. There's two types of cyclists. There's the folks that are comfortable riding the road, and there's everybody else. I personally am one of those everybody else types that isn't quite comfortable in traffic. So there will be shoulders such that the cyclists, can be in the roadway if they want, or the sidewalks will be wide enough, and the sidewalk through the middle will be wide enough such that cyclists can basically interact as like any other pedestrian would and ride their bikes on the sidewalks. What we call electrical design is actually the traffic signals. We are looking at 9 new signalized intersections within this segment. Starting to north here, of course, the intersection with the North Frontage Road and Johnson Lane will be signalized. The 2 crossovers, of course, where we cross traffic over to the opposite side will be signalized as well. And then the ramp terminals for the traffic that's exiting the interstate, at their merge points where they merge onto Johnson, either north or southbound, will also be signalized so that they can safely maneuver onto Johnson Lane. And of course, those signals will all be tied in with the crossovers to make sure we don't have any conflicting movements. And as most folks know, if you're familiar with the area, there is already a signal here at Old Hardin and Johnson. We're perpetuating that, but since we are expanding the intersection, we have to redo that traffic signal such that it's wide enough. And then to help with operations at this intersection, we also are going to signalize the extension of the Cole Street and Old Hardin Road intersection. And lastly, I also wanted to highlight, I don't have any graphic for it, but we are going to be adding roadway lighting to most of this segment. We'll be using LEDs, high efficiency LEDs, to really give it a nice, true light through here. And then also just, enhance the safety of the interchange, with crossing traffic and pedestrians coming through there, medians, things like that. We want to make sure it's well lit so that everybody can get through there. So be expecting that too as we move forward. And the limits have yet to be defined, but we are working with MDT right now to determine what the limits for the lighting will be with this segment. Now, utilities, when you hear me say, we're going to lower Johnson Lane by, 2 to 3 feet, you might be thinking, well, what about all the utilities in this area? So yes, there are quite a few buried utilities. We have been in contact with both public and private utility owners out here. There also is a lot of above ground utilities with fire hydrants and telephone poles and other utility boxes that are above ground. So the utility companies are aware of what we're doing, and as we refine our design and get closer to final design, we'll be working with them to get utilities relocated or incorporate their relocations into our design. So we never forget about the utility companies because they are a critical success factor to these projects. And last but certainly not least is the right-of-way design and acquisition. With a lot of the expansion that we're doing out here, there is some right-of-way that we would like to acquire to fit in all these improvements. And so I think the most important thing that we want to share today is just kind of what this timeline looks like. I know we've started to do some of the outreach for the folks that may be affected, but what we're looking at today is, or what we're looking at right now is finalizing our design. I mean, not having construction documents ready by any means, but have our design substantially complete by the end of this summer, such that early this fall, we can start contacting property owners, showing them what the proposal is for the new design, and potentially how they're affected and kind of what the acquisition process will look like. So we will be reaching out later this year with any information, and we're hoping that process takes less than a year, such that we can then get rolling with construction in the spring of 2022. So that's what I wanted to share today. Of course, if you've got questions about any of that process, we'd be happy to answer. And again, it'll be representatives from Dowell and MDT that will be working through the design and acquisition process. So a lot of the folks that you're hearing from today will be working through that. So that concludes, I guess, my discussion about the interchange. We can switch gears here real quick and talk about the overpass. I think Rod already ran through the kind of the limits of the project, but I'll run through it again real quick, just to kind of get us reoriented now as we switch gears over to the railroad overpass segment. Like I said, we'll start from the southern end of the Yellowstone River Bridge, and we'll work our way towards the southeast, towards the railroad tracks, which is what this gray line is here, and then Colson Road, which parallels the tracks, is this white line here. We're proposing a structure that goes over the top of both of those, and then some, and then it terminates shortly thereafter, sort of as we get off the structure. And in the interim, we'll have a temporary connection that will run for this end here down to Colson Road, such that, you know, this connection here has full utility and it can be open to the public while Section 5 is being constructed. Now, the road segment itself will be designed initially as a 2-lane road, 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, or excuse me, 1 12-foot lane in each direction, so 2 lanes total, with 8-foot shoulders. And then in the future, as traffic demands, it'll actually have enough right-of-way secured such that 2 additional lanes can be added, so 2 in each direction for that future expansion. That's what this blue box is depicting here, the 2 12-foot lanes in each direction with the 8-foot shoulders. And for those that are familiar with the site and visualize this area, our road prism, the top of the road surface will be approximately 8 feet in the air on average throughout between the railroad tracks and the Yellowstone River Bridge. So if you're familiar with the area, this road will be elevated about 8 feet if you're just trying to picture what it'll look like. Of course, the neat part about this segment too is another big structure. Of course, we got the big one over Yellowstone River, and this one is also not a small one that we will construct over the top of, like I said, the existing railroad, which is this orange box here, and existing Colson Road here. Now, in coordination with Montana Rail Link, and also with the TED, which I'll get into a little bit more, there is some considerations for track expansion with some side tracks there and some side tracks here to potentially serve the TED with, you know, some of the commercial industrial development that is anticipated in there. So in close coordination with them, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we don't create a choke point such that they can't they can't expand in the future. So we worked well with them to accommodate their needs. So that's what you're seeing here. This is kind of standing, say, northeast of the structure, looking back kind of towards town, with kind of Colson here on your left and the railroad on your right. Excuse me. The other thing that I want, the other thing I want to bring up here, bear with me. Oh, excuse me, I take a drink of water.
Do feel free to type any comments that you have in the meantime into the Q&A section. We did have one come in from Peter, and I think he read Doug's mind because he asked about pedestrian facilities on Johnson Lane right before Doug talked about pedestrian facilities.
Awesome.
So the two of you are in tandem.
Perfect.
Good for you.
Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to say about this structure is the final EIS and the record of decision documented this structure here as a 2-lane structure initially, and then as traffic demanded more lanes, that a twin structure would essentially, a separate twin structure would be built next to it. As we've done some more refined design and costing and, you know, working with the MRL and the TED and everybody else, we've realized that, you know what, it makes sense to actually build the 2 lanes on a structure that can actually be expanded into 4. So we want to disclose that today as part of this environmental review process. I guess to inform you that we have, we'll be building a 2-lane structure as originally planned, but it will sit on a substructure that can handle 4 lanes in the future. So when traffic demands and we need to widen this arterial to 4 lanes, we simply have to just expand the deck and not build more substructure to accommodate the additional laneage. And with that, like I said, we've been in close coordination with the TED. The targeted economic development district that's out there. That's what these yellow boxes are in this graphic right here. And this little bit darker yellow line here is the kind of the full bypass alignment as it approaches the Yellowstone River. So knowing that they've got a major infrastructure plans, which is all highlighted in this document. And of course, our large project that, we're proposing to build, from Lockwood to Billings Heights, it makes sense to coordinate those efforts. And so we've been in close coordination with TED and their steering committee to make sure that we are understanding when construction is going to happen, meeting infrastructure needs, and make sure we don't hurt each other and for any reason. The other thing that I wanted to point out too with this structure and with this segment is that with the structure over the top of the railroads, we're now creating a safer crossing, grade separated crossing over the railroad tracks. Right now at this particular location, there's an at-grade crossing close to where our structure is crossing. We'll actually be providing access on both sides of the tracks now with the bypass. So this at-grade crossing will be replaced by our new bridge. The existing crossing here at Johnson Lane will remain, but this one here will be modified to have the grade separated crossing. With that being said, that concludes, I guess, my update. Like I said, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
We do have a couple
we're
questions.
right in the middle of our design, so yeah, let's hear them.
Yeah. So the first question is Catherine asked, "What will be happening to Firth Street?"
Great question. So First Street will largely stay the way it is. However, your access will be a little bit different. So First Street's not shown on the map here, but I'll try to just kind of draw it. So First Street, for those that aren't familiar, First Street runs right here and it ends, right in here-ish. So it parallels Johnson, residential access road right here. With this proposal that we currently have, First Street will remain as is. But there will be no direct connection from Johnson Lane to it. So to get access on First Street, to get in and out, you'll have to travel via Johnson to Colson to Sandon and back around into it. And of course, that same loop back out. Now, when the entire bypass is fully built out, that bypass alignment looks something like this. Will come through here. It'll be the same thing, just not using Colson, just using the bypass alignment. So that's how Firth will be perpetuated.
Why would we not go 2 lanes each direction from the beginning?
Good question. So the traffic models that we currently have don't warrant that many lanes in each direction. So not necessary to spend all the money to put all those lanes in. 2 lanes, as best as we can predict, will accommodate the predicted traffic that will come in.
And one other, is there any access points from the TED to the elevated road?
Yeah, great question. So that's another thing that we've been in discussions with those property owners along there. There are drive approaches along there with the intent that as those parcels do develop, those same approach locations will work in the long term. So yeah, that's been a very important part of this too, that we don't have too many approaches on it, but we have enough that everybody has access to the new arterial, the new bypass. Good questions. I'm going to rifle back to the end here so that our contact information is still up on the screen.
Okay, so here the team contact information is shown on the screen here, both the project website, the project email address, the hotline phone number, and our physical mailing address. And while we're all together, before everyone starts jumping off, it is definitely worth noting the Vision Zero project, which many of you are probably very familiar with, but MDT's program, Vision Zero, drives everything that MDT does and everything that we consultants do in support of MDT. And fundamentally, it is the goal of working towards zero fatalities and zero serious injuries on Montana's roads. So there's many different approaches that MDT does towards this effort, but there is another one that is the public. The fifth E is everyone. And to that end, we want to wish you all a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. And please drive safely as we enter into this holiday weekend. Drive carefully through any construction areas that you may encounter. Slow down, drive cautiously, and be on the lookout for workers in work zones. Fines do double in work zones. Oh, it looks like we are getting a couple more questions. We can address those. There are on-access points or ramps to start with. I think that's in regard to the question you just answered.
There are no access points or ramps to start with.
I think clarifying.
Yeah, so I guess I'm assuming that has to do with the railroad overpass segment. You're right, the new alignment, and, there's no roads or anything out there now, but in our negotiations with those property owners, we wanted to make sure that their access was needed, was met. So there are access points that we have perpetuated, or that we've created for them, such that they have access off of the new road. Hopefully that answers your question, but please follow up with us if we didn't answer that question.
And how does the cost of 4 lanes now compare to adding extra 2 later?
That's a good question. There's a couple different things that go into it. It's not only cost that goes into it. We don't want to build more than what's necessary because it invites, other issues. Bridges are expensive, kind of on a per square foot basis. So we want to make sure that we're not building more than we need to now, being fiscally responsible with the budgets and the funds we have. And so a lot of it comes down to not only what's needed, but also what is budgeted and any other needs that the district has to maintain and build kind of district wide.
Oh, we have one other. I'm excited to see a DDI to eliminate the left crossings oncoming. Are the medians simple concrete to avoid maintenance of landscaping?
Yeah, great question. So I didn't touch on landscaping today. That's actually one thing that we're in the middle of talking about right now. We don't want to create we're not looking to create a whole lot of extra landscaping, but we're also not trying to create something that's just kind of there. We're looking at maybe some slip forms, to maybe put some kind of neat design on the bridge abutments. We're looking at maybe some colored concrete for the concrete medians. They will largely be concrete medians that are just, like you see kind of throughout town, that are capped, maybe stamped, maybe colored, likely colored, maybe stamped. Just hopefully a nice visually, appealing theme, but not a lot of heavy maintenance that, that drives up the cost of the interchange. Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, the left crossing oncoming, that is the huge safety benefit of DDIs. And that's ultimately with the imbalance of traffic at this interchange in particular, with just the residential development on the southeast quadrant, and the work centers basically in Billings. There's a huge imbalance of traffic in the AM and PM. It's tough to process with the standard interchange, but this configuration is what allows that kind of more fluid movement through not only Cole, Beecraft, Johnson, onto the interstate, and back in the evening as well. So yeah, thanks for that comment. Great observation.
Okay. So the team will linger here for a few moments in case any other questions come in, questions, comments, or inquiries. Again, our contact information is all on the screen for you if you wish to send a follow-up inquiry. Like we mentioned previously, We will be accepting questions, comments, inquiries in relation to this public meeting for the next 30 days. But ongoing, you are welcome to reach out to us regarding any project-related inquiries or questions throughout the entire duration of the project. We do sincerely appreciate all of you making time for this meeting today. And yeah, appreciate your accommodating this new virtual platform with us.
So there's a question up about the picture on the screen currently is showing a bike path / sidewalk. Of course, this is on the structure. So the question is, will there be sidewalk essentially the entire length of the project? Great question. Like I mentioned, just with the Johnson Lane interchange, we're always trying to keep the pedestrian bicycle community, all modes of transportation taken care of on our roads. With the, recognizing this is a higher speed facility, 45-mile-an-hour facility, we recognize that the interchange needed, the interstate is a barrier, so we needed pedestrian facilities through there. But then as the project progresses towards the north and you start heading towards the river, we have basically an agreement with the TED and the industrial development that's happening there that a multi-use path will be constructed through there, and then we'll connect with the Yellowstone River Bridge, which you see here. So the department, MDT, has agreed to help carry the pedestrian traffic across the river instead of a catapult system or boats or anything like that. We put a 10-foot path there on the bridge, get folks across, and then they will join up with the trail network system on Dover Park on the north side of the river there, and then eventually find a way to continue up further into the heights, find your way into Mary Street, and it can continue that way. So yes, there is continuous pedestrian facilities, not necessarily on the bypass, but there is a logical plan that if you do want to ride or walk your bike from the interchange all the way up to the heights to the 87, 312 kind of Main Street intersection there is a path to get there. Great question.
Being that we haven't gotten any more questions, I think we're going to sign off and wish you all a very happy 4th of July, happy and safe 4th of July weekend. Thanks very much for your time today. We appreciate it.